Well, welcome back to my channel, Workshopfriend. And as I mentioned in my previous video 2 weeks ago, while I was shifting my workshop into a new location, I mentioned then that we'd be returning to Pakistan for a couple of weeks, and that's where I am now. So COVID didn't stop us, we were able to get here, no problems. So in this workshop, my Pakistan workshop, I have the homemade lathe, which I featured in several videos, and the Colchester Student, which has been the subject of 3 videos on its refurbishment. Today I'd like to continue on the Colchester Student and covering in particular the topic of levelling. I did a couple of videos on tips for renovating the Colchester Student, and in the first one of those I tried to tackle the topic of levelling. And really I wasn't happy with my presentation there. I've thought about this more since, and I realised that there was a little more to levelling and jacking up the feet than I had originally realised. So having spent a little more time on it, I feel now that I'm able to proceed and level this lathe. The subject of today's video is how to level the Colchester Student Mk1 / Mark 1.5. It may be the same for later versions, I don't know. And we'll look at the footprint, we'll look at some of the issues, we'll look at the levelling process itself, and the proposed solution I have to bring this machine into alignment. I know there are lots of videos on YouTube about levelling lathes, but I wanted to make this one particularly for the Colchester Student because I haven't found anything yet which specifically addresses this model, and it's a very common model, so I think this might be relevant for other folk too. So before I couldn't attempt levelling properly because I didn't actually have an engineer's level. So while I was back in the UK, I picked this one up second hand. It's a Rabone Chesterman. It was in fairly good condition. It needed a little bit of treatment underneath here to remove surface rust, but it's perfectly functional and I'm very happy with it. And so I've had a little bit of fun using this and placing it on the both ends of the bed and seeing what effect jacking the lathe has at various points. And so I'd like to share with you on a piece of paper, a chart, basically what I've discovered by fiddling around with this. And obviously I've used the level at both ends of the lathe to check for twist in the bed. So let's go to the bench and have a look at this little chart I've produced, and hopefully that will give us a plan for how we can level the lathe. So this is a scale drawing of the machine looking from above, a plan view. This is the swarf tray, dotted line. The solid line is the perimeter of the base, and on top of that you can see a plan view of the bed. This dotted line is the headstock end, the furthest extent to the left hand side, and the bed ends here. And what you find as you look around the lathe is that in fact there are 2 pads here, and here, which extend below the stand. So when the lathe sits on the floor, these are the points of contact. Then, in addition, you have 2 points here, holding down bolt holes, which are accessible from the end. We have one at the front here, which is clearly visible from the front of the machine. And then we have 2 jacks, one at the rear and one just inside the cabinet. So we'll take a look around the lathe and see those points before we move on to discuss this further. Now in my previous video, I think it was video number 1 on renovation tips for a Colchester Student lathe, I talked about the levelling procedure, and at that point I had the lathe mounted on these very heavy rubber rings or donuts, and they were mounted at these 2 points and here to the rear. And then I additionally used jacking points. Now what I found from that was that I thought at the time that was adequate, and this kind of soft mounting was acceptable, but now I've come to the conclusion it's not. So what I have done is remove the rubber donuts, and I've replaced them with hardwood packing, and keeping the approximately 1.5 inches height increase, which suits me. But now I need to think more about how we're going to actually support this lathe. So I'm doing away with support of these pads, and I'm now supporting it where these mounting lugs are. And in doing so, what I want to do is support it evenly across the six places of support. So this is also to scale. This is my level, 12-inch level. So it sits across the top of the V's. Of course, you need to make sure the V's are clean first. There are no dents on there or any marks. So sitting across the top of the V's, I check the headstock end with the tailstock end. And as I'm set up at the moment, I can, in fact, get that level. I actually got my level by planing the wood and then using the jack at the other end, and I removed all twist. But what I found when I put the level in the middle was that fiddling around with this jack and varying the load on here actually upset the reading here, and also induced some twist in the middle. So that indicates clearly to me that we need to use all 6 mounting points. So because fiddling around with packing is difficult, I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's certainly difficult. What I propose doing is replacing this chock with a homemade jack at this point, and this chock with another homemade jack. And what that will enable me to do is I will easily now be able to use this jack to level the headstock end. I can use the proprietary jack which comes in the stand to level the tailstock end, and then in the middle I can use these 2 jacks, the proprietary one and the homemade one, to vary the load in the middle, the amount of support that comes in the middle of the stand, and also to remove twist. So that's my proposed plan. So I've drawn a schematic of a jack. I'm going to make 2 of them. This is twice full size, that's full size. It's basically made from this 1 3/8 hexagon for the base, mild steel, and 1 inch across flats for the nut. It has a locating spigot on the top, 1/2 inch diameter, which conveniently fits in the holding down bolt holes. It has a range of a minimum of 1 1/4 inch height up to 1 3/4 inch height. So the nominal is 1 1/2, which is exactly what I wanted. So I'm going to set to cut some material and make a couple of these. I'm not going to show you the whole operation, but I'll show a few highlights from that, and then we'll look at the jacks, and then we'll install them and see how we get on with leveling. hours later, and we now have 2 jacks. I'm happy with the outcome. They've come out well. In fact, the 1 inch AF hexagon stock for the top part wasn't made from mild steel. It was something quite fancy which I found in the market here. Anyway, it's done. It was a bit hard going, but it's done. So as per the drawing, we can get a minimum height of about 1 1/4 and a maximum height actually of in excess of 1 3/4. So that's great. So now what we're going to do is install these in 2 places on the lathe around the perimeter, as I showed in the previous drawing, in the previous chart, and we will then experiment with 6 points of contact and see if we can satisfactorily level the lathe. A little bit fiddly to get this located in the hole, but it's gone in now, so now we can start to take up the slack. You definitely need 2 spanners, one to restrain the base and one to operate the top portion. Okay, that's just taking up the slack. And we'll move around and do the other side. Okay, I think we're ready to slip this under. So we just lift up the corner, slide this block out of the way. I'm just going to put that there to provide some support on the corner in case I need it. And then, okay, we need to slide that inside. I'm reluctant to put my fingers underneath there. Yeah, it's taking the weight, but it's not located in the hole. I think we're going to have to do this another way. We're going to have to get this located in the hole first and then lower it. Like that. That's what we want. That's it, located. Good. Now we can lift that and put it on the jack. Great, that's on. Okay, so now we can raise and lower using the jack. Okay, I think it's time to start using the level. So I placed the level now at the headstock end, and we're going to work on the headstock first, and using that jack that I just installed, we're going to level the headstock first and then move to the tailstock. So if I move in a little closer, I think you can see there that the bubble is just very slightly to the rear. No, it's not, it's slightly to the front. I'm not sure if you can see that, but that looks closer. So I think what we're going to do now is move to the tailstock and have a go at that. Now hopefully you can see that at the tailstock end it's slightly high to the rear, so we need to lift the front. Now the advantage we have now, of course, is we have the inbuilt jacks, so the one inside the cupboard, we need to raise that a touch. Yep, that's bang on. Good. So now I'm going to go back to the headstock and just check that that is still okay. Okay, the headstock is now not okay, so we're going to have to raise the front slightly. So using our homemade jack, we're going to have to raise that slightly. So I'm going to raise it slightly. Check that again. Okay, a bit more. Oh, it's going the wrong way. Should be lowered. Okay, up a touch. You can certainly see that using these jacks, this is much easier than chopping it up. Yep, that's it. That's fine. Just check the tailstock again. So checking the tailstock again. Let's have a look at that. Yeah, that is almost exactly where I left it. Just gonna lift it slightly. Yep, that's bang on. Good, so one more check at the headstock. Yep, that's bang on. Now I'm going to put a level in the middle and going to have a go with these two middle jacks and see how we get on with them. At the moment there's no weight on this front jack at all, so I'll just take the load up on this and see what happens. That's it, just taking something now. Let's have a look. Yeah, I would say that's lifted it slightly at the front. Let me put a bit more on the back one, on the rear one. And I'm going to take a little bit off the front. Final check to the tailstock. Yeah, that all looks level to me. Well, I think we've accomplished what we set out to do, to level this Colchester Student 1/1.5 with this particular layout of cabinet and mounting points. So now we have the load evenly distributed over 6 points, and the lathe is level at both ends of the bed and the middle. So everything is stable. So it'll be interesting to see how the hardwood chocks hold up, whether they do change with time and with seasonal variation, so we'll see what happens there. But the point is, it's easy now to adjust. With these 4 jacking points, it's very easy to adjust, unlike before. So if you've appreciated this content, consider giving me a thumbs up and subscribing to the channel. I look forward to the next video, which will be in the UK, COVID permitting, and we do hope to be back there by Christmas. Thank you.